Welcome back, restless mind. Did you ever find yourself lie awake, wondering what is the point of it all? Let me show you how ancient philosophers dealt with the same worries you might have. This is another night of finding existential comfort. Close your eyes. Let your mind drift. Tonight, we're going to explore ideas that have shaped human thought for thousands of years. Philosophy isn't just about abstract thinking. It's about understanding the texture of existence itself. Each concept we explore tonight is a doorway into a different way of seeing the world. And as we move through these ideas together, you might find something curious happening. Your thoughts will slow down. The weight of the day will begin to lift, because philosophy at its core is about stepping back from the immediate and seeing the vast pattern beneath. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. The cave inside your mind. There's a version of you that doesn't exist yet, a version that sees things you cannot currently see. This isn't mystical thinking, it's a simple truth about human perception. Right now, you're looking at reality through a specific lens, a lens shaped by your experiences, your culture, your language, your fears. But what if that lens itself is distorting everything? The ancient Greek philosopher Plato understood this deeply. He asked us to imagine prisoners in a cave. These prisoners have been chained since birth, facing a blank wall. Behind them burns a fire. Between the fire and the prisoners, objects pass by, casting shadows on the wall. The prisoners watch these shadows dance. They give them names. They believe the shadows are reality itself. To them, a shadow of a bird is a bird. A shadow of a tree is a tree. They have never seen the actual objects. They have never felt sunlight. One day, a prisoner is freed. He's dragged out of the cave, and the sunlight blinds him. It hurts. He wants to go back to the comfortable darkness where everything made sense. But slowly, his eyes adjust. He sees trees, real trees, not shadows. He sees the sky. He realizes that everything he thought was real was merely a projection. The shadows were never the truth. They were echoes of something deeper. Now here's the unsettling part. If you were born in that cave, you would resist leaving too. Because leaving means admitting that everything you believed was incomplete. It means facing a reality that's larger and stranger than you imagined. Plato believed that most of us live in a kind of cave. We mistake our perceptions for reality. We mistake our opinions for knowledge. We mistake comfort for truth. But wisdom, he said, requires breaking free. It requires looking at the fire itself, and then beyond it. The question Plato leaves us with is simple, but profound. What shadows are you watching right now, thinking they're real? The pattern that repeats forever. There's something strange about time. We think of it as a straight line, past, present, future. But what if time is actually a circle? The ancient Stoics believed in something called eternal recurrence, the idea that the universe, in all its vastness, eventually repeats itself. Every star, every planet, every person, living the exact same life, over and over, forever. This wasn't a metaphor to them. They believed it literally. If the universe is infinite and matter is finite, then eventually every possible arrangement of atoms must repeat, which means this moment, you, listening to this right now, has happened before, and it will happen again, an infinite number of times. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche brought this idea back in the 19th century. He called it the ultimate test of how you should live your life. If you had to live this exact life again, every joy, every pain, every mundane Tuesday, would you embrace it? Or would you recoil in horror? Most people, Nietzsche said, would be crushed by the thought, because most people live lives of quiet regret. They postpone happiness. They avoid difficult truths. They tell themselves they'll change later. But if later never comes, if you're doomed to repeat this life exactly as it is, then every choice matters absolutely. Eternal recurrence isn't about whether it's scientifically true. It's about forcing yourself to confront a simple question. Are you living a life you'd be willing to repeat forever? If the answer is no, then something needs to change. And the beautiful thing is, you can change it. Because even if time is a circle, you still have agency within this iteration. You still get to choose how you respond to the world. So breathe deeply. Let that question settle. What would you change if you knew you'd live this life again? The observer and the observed. Here's a thought that might make you pause. What if you've never actually seen the world? Think about it. When you look at a tree, you're not seeing the tree itself. You're seeing light reflecting off the tree, hitting your retina, being processed by your brain. The image you experience is a construction, a simulation your mind creates from electrical signals. The philosopher Immanuel Kant called this the phenomenon versus the noumenon. The phenomenon is what you experience, the world as it appears to you. The noumenon is the thing in itself, the world as it actually is, beyond perception. And here's the twist. You can never access the noumenon. You're trapped inside your own perception. Everything you've ever experienced, every color, every sound, every sensation, is mediated by your senses and interpreted by your brain. You have no direct access to reality. You only have access to your brain's best guess about reality. This might sound unsettling, but it's also strangely comforting, because it means that when you're anxious about something, you're not responding to reality itself. You're responding to your interpretation of reality, and interpretations can change. When you worry about what someone thinks of you, you're not worrying about the truth. You're worrying about your brain's simulation of what they might think. When you fear the future, you're not fearing something real. You're fearing a projection, a story your mind is telling. Kant believed that while we can never know the noumenon, we can still find meaning in the phenomenon. We can still live ethically. We can still love. We can still create. Because the world we experience, even if it's not the ultimate reality, is the only world we have. And that's enough. So let go of the need to see things perfectly. You're not supposed to. You're seeing things the only way a human can. And that's exactly as it should be. The ship that changed piece by piece. Imagine you own a wooden ship. Over the years, the planks begin to rot, so you replace them one by one. Eventually, every single plank has been replaced. The question is it still the same ship? This is called the Sorites Paradox, and it reveals something profound about identity. If the ship isn't the same because its parts have changed, then are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Your cells have been replaced. Your thoughts have evolved. Your body is different, so who are you really? Some philosophers say identity is about continuity. As long as there's an unbroken chain of change, the ship is still the same ship. Others say identity is about essence. The ship is defined by its original materials. Replace them, and it becomes something new. But here's where it gets stranger. Imagine someone collects all the old planks and rebuilds the original ship. Now there are two ships. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? The one that was maintained continuously, or the one made from the original parts? This paradox doesn't have a clean answer, and that's the point. Identity is not as solid as we think. We cling to the idea that we are fixed, unchanging selves, but in reality, we are processes, constantly changing, constantly becoming. The person you were yesterday is not the person you are now, and the person you'll be tomorrow doesn't exist yet. This can be unsettling, but it can also be liberating. Because if you're not a fixed self, then you're not trapped by your past. You can change, you can grow, you can let go of old identities that no longer serve you. The ship of Theseus reminds us that we are not things. We are flows. And in that flow, there is infinite possibility. The veil you can't remove. Here's a question that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries. Is there an objective morality, a set of rules that are true regardless of culture or circumstance? Or is morality just a social agreement, something we made up to keep society functioning? John Rawls, a 20th century philosopher, tried to answer this with a thought experiment. He asked us to imagine something called the veil of ignorance. Suppose you're designing a society from scratch. But there's a catch. You don't know what position you'll have in that society. You don't know if you'll be rich or poor, healthy or sick, powerful or powerless. You're behind a veil. You can't see your future circumstances. Now design a fair society. What rules would you create? Rawls believed that behind this veil, people would choose fairness. Because if you don't know where you'll end up, you'll want to protect the most vulnerable. You'll create a society with safety nets, equal opportunities, and basic rights, because you might be the one who needs them. This thought experiment is powerful because it removes bias. When you don't know if you'll be the winner or the loser, you're forced to think about justice from every angle. It reveals something important about morality. True fairness isn't about self-interest. It's about imagining yourself in someone else's position. It's about empathy extended through reasoning. The veil of ignorance doesn't solve every moral question, but it gives us a framework, a way to think about justice that transcends personal gain. And in a world where people often prioritize their own needs, that's a profound shift. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine that veil. Imagine not knowing who you'll be tomorrow. What kind of world would you want to wake up in? The paradox of choice. Here's something strange about modern life. We think that more options make us happier. But research shows the opposite. The more choices we have, the more anxious we become. This is called the paradox of choice, and it reveals a deep truth about human psychology. When you walk into a store and see 30 types of jam, you might feel overwhelmed. Which one is the best? What if you choose wrong? But if there are only 3 types, the decision is easy. You pick one and move on. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard understood this long before modern psychology. He wrote about the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo that comes from having too many possibilities. When every path is open, choosing one means closing off all the others, and that feels like loss. We live in an age of infinite options, infinite careers, infinite places to live, infinite people to meet. But instead of feeling liberated, many people feel paralyzed, because every choice feels like it could be the wrong one. Kierkegaard believed that the solution wasn't to have fewer choices. It was to commit fully to the choices you make, to stop second-guessing, to stop wondering if the grass is greener elsewhere. Because the grass is greenest where you water it, the paradox of choice teaches us that freedom without commitment is just anxiety. Real freedom comes from choosing something and then pouring yourself into it, whether it's a career, a relationship, or a way of life. The act of committing transforms the choice into something meaningful. So if you've been stuck in indecision, this is your permission to let go. You don't need to make the perfect choice. You just need to make a choice and then make it the right one through your effort and intention. The consciousness you can't prove. Here's a question that will keep philosophers awake at night. How do you know that other people are conscious? You experience your own thoughts and feelings. You know what it's like to be you. But when you look at another person, all you see is behavior. They talk, they move, they seem to respond. But do they have an inner experience like yours? Or are they just biological machines, processing information without awareness? This is called the problem of other minds, and it's one of the most fundamental puzzles in philosophy. You can't step inside someone else's consciousness. You can't verify that their experience of red is the same as yours. You can't prove they're not just sophisticated robots mimicking consciousness without actually having it. This might sound absurd. Of course, other people are conscious, right? But the philosopher Thomas Nagel asked a deeper question. What is it like to be a bat? A bat experiences the world through echolocation, bouncing sound waves off objects to navigate. You can study a bat's brain. You can measure its neural activity, but you can never know what it's like to be a bat. To experience the world as a bat does. If you can't even understand a bat's consciousness, how can you be sure you understand another human's? Nagel's point isn't that other people aren't conscious. It's that consciousness is subjective. It can't be fully captured by objective observation, and that's what makes it so mysterious. The problem of other minds reminds us of something important. We are fundamentally alone in our inner experience. No one will ever fully understand what it's like to be you. But at the same time, we are connected through this shared mystery. Everyone around you is having their own private, subjective experience, their own inner world that you can never fully access. And that's both isolating and beautiful. It means that every person you meet is a universe unto themselves, a mystery you can explore but never fully solve. So treat people with that in mind. You don't know what it's like to be them, but you can honor the fact that they are experiencing something just as deeply and vividly as you are. The future that doesn't exist. Yet, let's talk about time. Specifically, let's talk about the future. We think about the future constantly. We plan for it, we worry about it, we make decisions based on what might happen tomorrow, next year, decades from now. But here's the strange part. The future doesn't exist. It's not a place you can go to. It's not a thing you can touch. It's a mental construct, a projection your brain creates based on patterns from the past. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spent his life thinking about time and existence. He argued that humans are unique because we are always leaning into the future. We are beings who project ourselves forward. We don't just live in the present. We live towards something, a goal, a hope, a fear. But this creates a tension because the future we're leaning into is imaginary. It's a story we tell ourselves about what might happen. And when the future arrives, it's never quite what we expected. Heidegger called this being toward death. The ultimate future, the one certainty, is that we will die. And knowing this shapes how we live. Some people avoid thinking about death. They distract themselves with busyness, entertainment, superficial concerns. But Heidegger believed that confronting death directly is the key to living authentically. Because when you truly accept that your time is finite, you stop wasting it. You stop living for others' expectations. You stop postponing the things that matter. You start asking, what do I actually want to do with the time I have? The future is not a burden to carry. It's a canvas you get to paint, and the only way to paint it well is to be present now, not lost in fantasies of what could be, not trapped in regrets of what was, just here, making choices, living deliberately, because the future is built from the present. Every decision you make now is shaping what comes next. So breathe. Let go of the imaginary futures you've been worrying about. They don't exist yet. And when they do arrive, you'll meet them as you are, not as you fear you'll be. The demon in your mind. Imagine this. What if everything you believe is false? What if an evil demon is deceiving you, making you think you have a body, that the world exists, that 2 + 2 = 4? This was René Descartes' thought experiment. He wanted to find something he could know with absolute certainty. So he doubted everything. Maybe his senses were lying to him. Maybe his memories were fake. Maybe even logic itself was an illusion. But then he arrived at one thing he couldn't doubt. I think, therefore I am. Even if a demon is deceiving him, the act of thinking proves that he exists. Because to be deceived, you must exist. This simple statement, I think, therefore I am, became the foundation of modern philosophy. It's the one certainty in a world of doubt. But here's the twist. Descartes' demon might not be so imaginary. Your brain is constantly filtering reality. It's deciding what to show you and what to hide. It's interpreting ambiguous information and filling in gaps. In a sense, your brain is the demon, not in a malicious way, but in the sense that it's always mediating your experience. You're not seeing reality directly. You're seeing a simulation your brain creates, and that simulation is influenced by your beliefs, your emotions, your past experiences. Two people can look at the same event and see completely different things, not because one is lying, but because their brains are constructing different realities. So when Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, he was right. But there's a deeper layer. The I that thinks is not as solid as it seems. It's a process, a flow of thoughts, perceptions, sensations. And the reality you experience is not fixed. It's flexible, which means you have more power than you think. If your brain is constructing your reality, then you can learn to construct it differently. You can question the stories you tell yourself. You can challenge the beliefs that limit you. You can become aware of the demon, and in doing so, reclaim your agency. The heap of sand. Here's a puzzle that seems simple, but reveals something profound about language and reality. If you have a heap of sand, and you remove one grain, is it still a heap? Probably. Remove another grain. Still a heap. Keep going. At what point does it stop being a heap? After removing 1,000 grains? 10,000? There's no clear answer. This is called the Sorites Paradox, the paradox of the heap, and it exposes a fundamental problem with how we categorize the world. We use words like heap, tall, bald, rich, but these words don't have precise boundaries. When does a tall person become short? When does a rich person become poor? There's no exact dividing line, just a fuzzy gradient. The Sorites Paradox shows us that language is imperfect. It's a tool we use to carve up reality, but reality itself doesn't come pre-carved. It's continuous, fluid, resisting our attempts to pin it down with labels. This has implications for how we think about identity. We use categories to define ourselves: introvert, extrovert, successful, failure. But these categories are artificial. They're mental constructs, not truths. You might think of yourself as not a morning person. But what does that mean exactly? Is there a precise threshold of morning alertness that separates morning people from non-morning people? Of course not. It's a spectrum, and you're somewhere on it, but the label itself is just a simplification. The Sorites Paradox invites us to hold our identities more loosely, to recognize that the lines we draw are often arbitrary, and that we have the freedom to redraw them. You're not locked into being any particular type of person. You're a process, a flow, and every moment is an opportunity to shift in a new direction. The burden of freedom. Jean-Paul Sartre once said something that sounds pessimistic. At first, man is condemned to be free. What did he mean? He meant that unlike a rock or a tree, you don't have a fixed essence. You're not determined by your nature. You have to create yourself through your choices. And that's a burden, because it means you can't blame anyone else for who you become. You can't say, this is just how I am, because how you are is the result of countless choices you've made, consciously or unconsciously. Sartre called this radical freedom, and he believed it was the source of human anxiety. Because if you're truly free, then you're responsible for your actions, for your life, for the meaning you create or fail to create. Most people, Sartre said, live in bad faith. They pretend they're not free. They hide behind roles, expectations, identities. They say things like, I have to go to this job I hate, but you don't have to. You're choosing to, maybe for good reasons, bills, family, security. But it's still a choice, and recognizing that is both terrifying and empowering. Because if everything is a choice, then you can choose differently. You're not trapped. You're just choosing to stay. Now, Sartre wasn't saying you should quit your job and abandon your responsibilities. He was saying you should own your choices. Stop pretending you're a victim of circumstance. Stop acting like your life is happening to you. It's not. You're happening to your life, every moment, every decision. And once you accept that, something shifts. You stop feeling powerless. You stop waiting for permission. You start living authentically, making choices that align with who you actually want to be. The burden of freedom is heavy, but it's also the only path to a meaningful life, because meaning isn't given, it's created, and only you can create it. The philosopher who doubted everything. There was a school of philosophy in ancient Greece called Pyrrhonian Skepticism. Its followers believed that we can never know anything with certainty. Every belief, they said, can be doubted. Every argument has a counter-argument. Every perception could be an illusion. So they suspended judgment on everything. They didn't believe or disbelieve. They simply withheld commitment. This might sound like a recipe for paralysis. If you doubt everything, how can you make decisions? How can you live? But the Pyrrhonists had an answer. You can live by appearances. You don't need to believe that the sun will rise tomorrow to act as if it will. You don't need to know the ultimate truth about morality to treat people kindly. You just follow custom, preference, and practical necessity without claiming to possess absolute knowledge. And here's the surprising part. The Pyrrhonists believed this leads to tranquility, because most human suffering comes from clinging to beliefs. We suffer when reality doesn't match our expectations. We suffer when we're proven wrong. We suffer when we dogmatically insist that our view is the only correct one. But if you hold your beliefs lightly, if you recognize that you might be mistaken, then you're free. Free from the need to be right. Free from the anxiety of defending your worldview. Free to change your mind when new evidence appears. This doesn't mean being wishy-washy or uncommitted. It means being humble, recognizing that your current understanding is provisional, that the map is not the territory, that your beliefs are tools, not truths. In a world where people kill each other over differing beliefs, This is a radical idea. What if we all held our convictions a little more lightly? What if we approached disagreements with curiosity instead of defensiveness? What if we were willing to say, I don't know? The Pyrrhonists believed that doubt, real, honest doubt, is the beginning of wisdom, not the cynical doubt that dismisses everything, but the humble doubt that opens you to learning. So, tonight, as you drift towards sleep, practice that doubt. Let go of the need to know. Let go of the need to be certain. Just rest in the mystery, because the universe is vast and your understanding is small, and that's okay. The mirror of self-awareness. Here's a curious fact about consciousness. Most animals don't recognize themselves in a mirror. They see their reflection and think it's another animal. But a few species pass the mirror test. They realize the reflection is themselves. Humans, great apes, dolphins, elephants, magpies. These animals have a sense of self. They know they are distinct entities in the world. But here's the question, what does it mean to have a self? Is the self a thing, or is it a process? The philosopher David Hume tried to find the self. He looked inward, examining his own mind, and he found only a stream of perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, constantly changing, but no permanent, unchanging self at the center of it all. Hume concluded that the self is an illusion. It's a useful fiction we tell ourselves to make sense of experience. But there's no actual you inside your head, just a bundle of perceptions loosely tied together by memory and habit. This might sound disturbing. If there's no self, then who are you? But many spiritual traditions arrived at the same conclusion thousands of years ago. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, and that realizing this leads to liberation. Because if there's no fixed self, then there's nothing to defend, no ego to protect, no identity to cling to. You're free to change, free to let go, free to be. The mirror test reveals that self-awareness is rare in nature, but it also reveals that self-awareness comes with a cost. Once you know you exist, you become aware of your own mortality. You become capable of anxiety, regret, self-doubt. You start asking, who am I? Why am I here? What does it all mean? These questions have no final answers, but they're what make us human. And tonight, as you reflect on these ideas, notice what's happening. You're thinking about thinking. You're aware of being aware. You're watching your own mind at work. That capacity, that strange loop of self-reflection, is one of the most remarkable features of consciousness. And it's yours, not something you need to earn or achieve, just something you are. So rest in that awareness. You don't need to figure out what the self is. You just need to be it. The game we can't stop playing life is full of rules. Some are explicit, laws, social norms, job requirements. Others are implicit, unspoken expectations about how to behave, what to say, how to present yourself. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein compared these rules to games. He called them language games, and he argued that meaning itself only exists within these games. Think about chess. The pieces have no inherent meaning. A pawn is just a piece of wood. But within the game, it has a role, a function, a set of moves it can make. The same is true for words. A word like justice has no meaning in isolation. It only means something within the context of how people use it. The language game we're playing. Wittgenstein believed that most philosophical confusion comes from misunderstanding the rules of the game. We think we're asking deep questions about reality, but really, we're just confused about how language works. For example, People argue endlessly about whether the mind is separate from the body, but Wittgenstein would say, this isn't a factual question. It's a confusion about how we use the words mind and body. The problem isn't reality, it's the language game we're playing. This idea is both deflating and liberating. Deflating, because it suggests that many of our deepest questions are just linguistic puzzles. Liberating, because it means we can stop spinning in circles and focus on how language actually works in practice. But there's a deeper layer here. If meaning is determined by use, then meaning is flexible. The language games we play are not fixed. They can change, evolve, be rewritten. When you say, I'm not good at this, you're playing a particular language game, one where good has a certain meaning, and this refers to something you're judging yourself on. But you could change the game. You could redefine good. You could question whether the standards you're using even make sense. Wittgenstein showed us that we're not trapped by reality. We're trapped by the games we play, and games can be changed. So if you find yourself stuck in a painful story, I'm not enough, I'll never succeed, I'm broken, remember, those are just moves in a language game, and you can learn to play a different game. The question that has no answer. Here's a question that philosophers have debated for millennia. Why is there something rather than nothing? Think about it. The universe didn't have to exist. There could have been nothing. No matter, no energy, no space, no time. Just absolute nothingness. But instead there's something. Stars, galaxies, planets, life, consciousness. Why? The philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz called this the primordial existential question, and he believed there must be a reason, a sufficient explanation for why anything exists at all. Some point to God as the answer. Others point to quantum mechanics, the idea that universes can spontaneously emerge from nothing due to quantum fluctuations. But both of these explanations just push the question back one step. If God created the universe, why does God exist? If quantum fields can create universes, why do quantum fields exist? The philosopher Martin Heidegger approached this differently. He said the question itself reveals something profound. We are the beings who ask why. We're the part of the universe that looks back at itself and wonders about its own existence, and that wondering, that questioning, is not a problem to be solved. It's the essence of being human. We are finite creatures asking infinite questions. We are temporary patterns trying to understand the eternal. And we'll never have all the answers. But that's not a failure. It's what makes life meaningful. If you knew everything, if there were no more mysteries, life would lose its depth. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, is not meant to be answered. It's meant to awaken wonder, to remind you that existence itself is astonishing, that the fact you're here, conscious, aware, capable of thought, is the most improbable and miraculous thing. So let that question linger. Don't rush to answer it. Just sit with the strangeness of being, because in that strangeness, there's a kind of beauty, a recognition that you're part of something vast and mysterious, something that didn't have to be, but is. The invisible hand of habit. Here's something most people don't realize. The majority of your actions are not conscious decisions. They're habits, automatic patterns your brain has learned to execute without thinking. When you wake up in the morning, you probably follow the same routine. Check your phone, go to the bathroom, make coffee. You don't consciously decide to do these things. You just do them. The philosopher William James wrote extensively about habit. He called it the enormous flywheel of society, because habits keep the world running. If you had to consciously think about every action, how to walk, how to speak, how to eat, you'd be paralyzed. Habits free up your conscious mind to focus on new problems, but they also trap you, because once a habit is formed, it's hard to break. Your brain defaults to the path of least resistance, and that path is whatever you've done before. This explains why change is so difficult. It's not that you lack willpower, it's that you're fighting against deeply ingrained neural patterns. But here's the insight: if habits are learned, they can be unlearned. If your brain can wire itself one way, it can rewire itself another way. You're not stuck with who you've been. You can build new habits, new patterns, new ways of being. The key is to start small. Don't try to change everything at once. Just pick one tiny behavior and repeat it consistently. Your brain will start to automate it, and over time, that small change will compound. James believed that by age 30, most people are set like plaster. Their habits have hardened into an unchangeable form. But modern neuroscience disagrees. The brain remains plastic, capable of change, throughout your entire life. You're never too old to rewire yourself. You're never too stuck to start fresh. The invisible hand of habit is powerful, but you have the ability to guide that hand, to shape your defaults, to become slowly and deliberately the person you want to be. The ethics of intention. Here's a moral dilemma. Suppose you're driving carefully, following all the rules, but a child runs into the street and you hit them. Now suppose you're driving recklessly, texting on your phone, but you get lucky, no one gets hurt. Which is worse? Most people's intuition is that the first scenario is less blameworthy. Because your intention was good, you were trying to drive safely. The outcome was tragic, but it wasn't your fault. In the second scenario, you intended to be reckless. The fact that no one got hurt is just luck. This reflects a deep moral principle, that intentions matter. The philosopher Immanuel Kant built an entire ethical system around this idea. He argued that the morality of an action is determined by the intention behind it, not the consequences. If you do the right thing for the right reason, that's moral. If you do the right thing for the wrong reason, say, to gain approval, that's not truly moral. This is called deontological ethics. The ethics of duty. Kant believed that moral laws are absolute. You should never lie, even if lying would save someone's life, because lying violates the principle of treating people as ends in themselves, not as means to your goals. This seems rigid, but Kant's point is deeper. He's asking, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who acts with integrity, regardless of the outcome? Or do you want to be someone who compromises their principles whenever it's convenient? The answer reveals what you truly value. Of course, intentions alone aren't enough. You can intend to help someone and still cause harm, and consequences do matter. But Kant's insight is that morality isn't just about results. It's about character, about the kind of person you're becoming through your choices. So when you face a moral decision, ask yourself, what would someone with strong character do? Not, what will get me the best outcome, but what action reflects the values I want to embody? Because in the end, your intentions shape who you are, and who you are is the only thing you truly control. The nothing that terrifies us. There's a concept in existential philosophy that's hard to talk about. It's called the void, or sometimes nothingness. It's the recognition that beneath all the structure, meaning, and purpose we've built, there's nothing. No inherent reason for existence, no cosmic plan. No ultimate truth waiting to be discovered, just the vast, indifferent silence of the universe. This realization can be terrifying. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre described it as nausea, a visceral feeling of disgust and disorientation when you confront the absurdity of existence. But here's the paradox: the void is also the source of freedom, because if there's no predetermined meaning, then you get to create meaning. If there's no script for how your life should go, then you get to write your own script. The void is not an enemy, it's a blank canvas. Most people spend their lives avoiding the void. They fill every moment with distraction, work, entertainment, socializing, anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts. Because being alone with your thoughts means confronting the question, what's the point? But existentialists argue that this avoidance is cowardice. True courage is facing the void directly, not flinching away, not pretending there's some external source of meaning, just accepting this is it. Life has no inherent purpose, but I'm here anyway. So what will I do with this absurd, brief, miraculous existence? That's the existential challenge. And it's not about finding the answer. It's about living the question. Sartre believed that most people live inauthentically. They follow scripts written by others. They do what they're supposed to do. They become who they're supposed to be, but they never ask, is this what I actually want? Facing the void means rejecting those scripts. It means taking full responsibility for your life, accepting that you're the author and that no one else can write your story for you. This is both terrifying and exhilarating. Terrifying because it means there's no safety net. Exhilarating because it means you're truly free. So breathe into that emptiness. Let it be there. Don't try to fill it with false certainties. Just acknowledge it and then choose. Choose what matters to you. Choose how you want to live. Choose who you want to become. Because the void doesn't take away your power. It reveals it. The eternal return of the same. Imagine that when you die, time loops back to the beginning. You're born again. You live the exact same life. Every joy, every pain, every mundane moment, over and over, forever. This is Friedrich Nietzsche's thought experiment, the eternal return, and it's meant to be a test. If you knew you'd live this life infinitely, would you say yes? Would you embrace it? Or would you recoil in horror? Nietzsche believed this question reveals whether you're truly living. If the thought of repeating your life fills you with dread, then you're not living authentically. You're wasting time. You're avoiding what matters. You're compromising. But if you can say yes, if you can embrace even the painful parts as necessary, then you're living fully. This doesn't mean every moment should be blissful. It means every moment should be meaningful. Even the hard parts, even the failures, even the losses, because they're all part of the whole, and the whole is you. Nietzsche wasn't asking whether eternal return is literally true. He was asking, what kind of life is worth repeating? A life of comfort, a life of achievement, a life of safety, or a life of depth, where you loved fully, risked boldly, created authentically. The eternal return is about living without regret. It's about making peace with every choice you've made. Because if you'll live it all again, then there's no point in wishing things were different. There's only acceptance. And from that acceptance comes a strange kind of joy, not happiness in the conventional sense, but a deep, abiding yes to life, a recognition that this, all of this, is exactly as it should be. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, ask yourself, if you had to live today again, would you? If not, what needs to change? And if yes, savor that feeling, because it means you're on the right path. The thought that never ends. Here's a strange loop. You're reading these words right now, and you're aware that you're reading them, and you're aware that you're aware. You can keep going, aware of being aware, infinitely. This is the recursive nature of consciousness, the ability to think about thinking, to observe your own mind at work. The philosopher Douglas Hofstadter called this a strange loop, a self-referential pattern that loops back on itself, and he argued that this loop is what creates the sense of self. The I is not a thing, it's a process, a feedback loop of self-observation. Your brain is constantly creating a model of itself, and that model, that looping pattern, feels like you. But here's the twist. The self is both the observer and the observed. You're watching yourself think, but the watcher is also part of the system being watched. It's a hall of mirrors, an infinite regress, and somewhere in that regress, consciousness emerges. This explains why the self feels so solid, but is actually elusive. You can never step outside the loop and see it objectively, because the moment you try to observe yourself, you've created a new layer of observation. The self is always one step ahead, or one step behind. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The tool of observation is also what's being observed. Hofstadter believed that this strange loop is not a bug, it's a feature. It's what makes consciousness possible. The self isn't an illusion. It's a real pattern, but it's not a fixed thing. It's a dynamic process, and understanding this can change how you relate to yourself. When you feel stuck in negative thought patterns, remember you're not trapped. You're just caught in a loop, and loops can be interrupted by stepping back, by observing the pattern, by recognizing that the self, creating the thought, is not the same as the thought itself. There's space between the loops, and in that space, there's freedom. The paradox of tolerance. Here's a tricky question. Should a tolerant society tolerate intolerance? On one hand, tolerance means accepting different viewpoints, even ones you disagree with. On the other hand, if you tolerate intolerance, then intolerant groups can grow powerful enough to destroy tolerance itself. This is called the paradox of tolerance, and it was articulated by the philosopher Karl Popper. Popper argued that unlimited tolerance leads to the disappearance of tolerance, because intolerant groups don't play by the same rules. They use the openness of a tolerant society to gain power, and once they have power, they shut down dissent. So a truly tolerant society must be intolerant of intolerance. It must set boundaries. It must say, you can believe what you want, but you cannot harm others or suppress their rights. This isn't hypocrisy. It's self-preservation. The paradox of tolerance is relevant today more than ever, in an age of social media where extreme views can spread rapidly. The question becomes, how do we balance free speech with protection from harm? Popper's answer was clear. Tolerance is not a suicide pact. You don't have to tolerate those who seek to destroy tolerance itself. But this creates a challenge. Who decides what counts as intolerable? Where's the line between offensive speech and dangerous speech? These are not easy questions, but Popper offers a principle: focus on actions, not beliefs. You can tolerate people holding intolerant views, but you cannot tolerate actions that harm or oppress others. The paradox of tolerance teaches us that freedom requires boundaries, that openness requires protection, that to preserve a society where everyone can thrive, we must sometimes exclude those who seek to dominate. It's a difficult balance, but it's a necessary one. The self that observes the self. Let's end with a practice. For the next few moments, just notice your thoughts. Don't judge them. Don't engage with them. Just watch them arise and pass away, like clouds drifting across the sky. This is meditation, the practice of observing the mind without attachment. And it reveals something profound. There's a part of you that's separate from your thoughts, the part that's watching. Who is that watcher? The philosopher Alan Watts called it the witness, the silent observer that's always present but never noticed. Because it's so close, you overlook it. You are so busy being the thinker that you forget you're also the watcher. But when you meditate, you realize the watcher is more fundamental than the thoughts. Thoughts come and go, but the watcher remains. And that watcher is not troubled by the content of the thoughts. It doesn't matter if you're thinking about something pleasant or painful. The watcher observes both with the same equanimity. This is liberating, because it means you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which, thoughts arise. And that space is always calm, always still, always at peace, even when the thoughts are chaotic. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, rest in that awareness. You don't need to control your thoughts. You don't need to solve your problems. You just need to notice, to watch, to be. Because the watcher, the awareness itself, is already whole. It doesn't need fixing. It doesn't need improving. It just is. And so are you. The form behind the shadow. There's something Plato believed that sounds almost mystical. He thought that everything we see is just a copy, an imperfect reflection of a perfect original. He called these originals forms, eternal, unchanging, perfect versions of things. Think about a circle. You can draw a circle on paper, but no matter how carefully you draw it, it's never perfectly round. There are tiny imperfections, irregularities in the line, yet somehow you recognize it as a circle. How? Because you have an idea of what a perfect circle is. Not from seeing one, you've never seen a perfect circle, but from some deeper knowledge. Plato believed this knowledge comes from the realm of forms, a dimension where perfect circles exist, where perfect justice exists, where perfect beauty exists, and our souls, before birth, spent time in that realm. So when we see an imperfect circle in this world, we recognize it, because we remember the perfect form. This sounds strange to modern ears, but Plato's insight is deeper than it seems. He's asking, where do our ideals come from? Why do we have a sense that things could be better than they are? Why do we strive for perfection, even though we never achieve it? His answer is that perfection is real, just not in this world. It exists in a realm beyond the physical, and our longing for it is not foolish. It's a memory of something we once knew. Now, you don't have to believe in a literal realm of forms, but the idea is powerful, metaphorically, because it suggests that your ideals, your vision of who you could become, what the world could be, are not fantasies. They're glimpses of something real, something worth striving for, even if you never fully reach it. The form you're reaching for is not a delusion. It's a guide, a North Star, and every step toward it, no matter how imperfect, is meaningful. The moral law. Within Immanuel Kant once wrote something profound. Two things fill the mind with ever-increasing wonder and awe: the starry heavens above and the moral law within. The starry heavens represent the vastness of the universe, the infinite complexity of physical reality. But the moral law within, that's something different. It's the voice inside you that knows right from wrong, not because you were taught it, but because it's built into the structure of rational thought. Kant called this the categorical imperative, a universal moral law that applies to everyone, everywhere, always. His formulation was simple but powerful. Act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will let it become a universal law. In other words, before you do something, ask yourself, what if everyone did this? Would the world be better or worse? If you're about to lie to get what you want, imagine a world where everyone lies. Trust would collapse, communication would become meaningless, society would break down. So lying fails the categorical imperative. It's wrong, not because of the consequences, but because it can't be universalized. Kant believed that this test reveals objective morality, not relative to culture or circumstance, but absolute, because it's grounded in reason itself. This might seem rigid, and Kant was rigid. He famously said you should never lie, even to save a life. But his deeper point is about dignity. He argued that every person is an end in themselves, not a means to an end. You can't use people as tools to achieve your goals. You must treat them as autonomous beings, worthy of respect. This is the foundation of human rights, the idea that every person has inherent value, not because of what they can do for you, but simply because they exist. The moral law within is not about following rules. It's about recognizing the humanity in others and in yourself. It's about acting with integrity, not because someone is watching, but because it's right. So when you face a moral choice, listen to that inner voice, the one that knows, not the voice of self-interest, not the voice of convenience, but the quiet, steady voice that speaks from a deeper place, the moral law within. The weight of existence. There's a difference between anxiety and existential dread. Anxiety is fear about something specific, a deadline, a social situation, a health concern. It has an object, something you can point to. Existential dread is different. It's a fear that has no object, or rather, its object is existence itself. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called it angst, a deep, nameless unease. It's the feeling you get when you suddenly become aware of your own being, when you realize, I am here, I am alive, and I will die. And there's nothing I can do about it. Existential dread is not a psychological problem to be fixed. It's a fundamental feature of human consciousness. We are the only creatures who know we're going to die, who can imagine the end of our own existence, and that knowledge colors everything. Kierkegaard believed that existential dread arises from freedom, because unlike a rock or a tree, you have to choose how to live, and every choice closes off other possibilities. Every decision is a leap into the unknown, and there's no guarantee you'll land safely. But here's the paradox. Existential dread is also the beginning of authentic living, because when you confront the abyss, when you feel that deep unease, you can no longer hide behind distractions. You can no longer pretend that life is just about comfort and security. You're forced to ask, what really matters? What am I doing with the time I have? Am I living or just existing? Kierkegaard believed that the only response to existential dread is faith, not necessarily religious faith, though that was his path, but faith in the sense of commitment, choosing something, a way of life, a set of values, a relationship, and committing fully, even though you can't know for certain it's the right choice, even though doubt will always whisper in the background. Faith is the leap, and the leap is what transforms dread into meaning. So if you feel that nameless unease, that sense that something is fundamentally not right, don't run from it, sit with it, let it be there, because it's telling you something important. It's saying, wake up, stop sleepwalking through life, choose, and then live your choice fully. The hero who pushes the boulder. There's a myth from ancient Greece about a man named Sisyphus. He was punished by the gods for his trickery, his punishment, to push a boulder up a mountain. Every time he reaches the top, the boulder rolls back down, and he has to start over, forever. It's the ultimate symbol of futility, pointless, endless labor with no progress. But the philosopher Albert Camus saw something different in this myth. He saw a metaphor for human existence, because isn't that what life is like? You wake up, you go to work, you come home. You solve problems that reappear the next day. You clean your house and it gets dirty again. You achieve a goal, and then there's another goal waiting. Nothing is ever truly finished. Nothing is ever permanently solved. It's all just pushing boulders up mountains. Camus asked, how should we respond to this absurdity? One option is despair, to give up, to say it's all meaningless, so why bother? Another option is to invent false hope, to tell yourself that there's some ultimate purpose, some cosmic plan. But Camus rejected both of these. Instead, he said, imagine Sisyphus happy. Happy. How could he be happy pushing a boulder forever? Because he's chosen to be. Because he's accepted the absurdity. He's not waiting for the boulder to stay at the top. He's not hoping for rescue. He's simply pushing, fully present, fully engaged, finding meaning in the act itself. This is Camus' philosophy of the absurd. Life has no inherent meaning. The universe doesn't care about your goals or your suffering, but you can create meaning through your response, through your defiance, through your decision to keep pushing, even though the boulder will roll back down. This is not pessimism. It's a kind of radical acceptance, an embrace of life on its own terms, without illusions, without false comfort. Camus believed that the struggle itself is enough, that the journey is the destination. That meaning is not found at the top of the mountain, it's found in the pushing. So when your own boulder rolls back down, when you face setback, failure, repetition, remember Sisyphus. He's not defeated, he's free, free from the need for his labor to be justified by some external reward, free to find joy in the struggle itself, and in that freedom, there's a strange kind of triumph. The river you can't step in, twice. There's an ancient Greek philosopher named Heraclitus who said something profound. You can't step in the same river twice, because the river is always changing. The water that was there a moment ago has flowed downstream. New water has taken its place. The river looks the same, but it's not. And here's the deeper part. You're not the same either. Your cells have changed. Your thoughts have shifted. You are not the person who stepped into the river the first time. Heraclitus believed that change is the only constant. Everything is in flux. Everything is becoming. Nothing ever truly is. It's always in the process of becoming something else. This insight challenges our desire for stability. We want things to stay the same. We want relationships to remain as they were. We want our identities to be fixed. But Heraclitus says, that's an illusion. Everything is flowing, and resisting that flow is what causes suffering. Buddhism teaches something similar with the concept of impermanence. Anicca, the idea that all things are transient. Your joys will fade, your sorrows will pass, your body will age, your thoughts will change. Clinging to anything as if it were permanent is like trying to hold water in your hands. It slips through your fingers. But here's the liberating part. If everything is changing, then nothing is ever truly lost. Because it was never a fixed thing to begin with. It was always a process, a moment in an ongoing flow, and you are part of that flow too, not a separate self standing outside the river, but a wave, a temporary pattern in the water, rising, cresting, falling back into the ocean. So when you lose something, a relationship, a job, a version of yourself, remember, it was never solid to begin with. It was always changing, and its end is not a tragedy. It's just the river flowing. The question is not how to stop the flow. The question is, can you learn to flow with it? The contract we never signed. Here's a question that political philosophers have debated for centuries. Why should you obey the law? Not because you might get punished if you don't, but fundamentally, what gives the government authority over you? The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau had an answer: the social contract. He argued that in a state of nature, before governments existed, people were free, but they were also vulnerable. No one to protect them, no one to settle disputes. Life was, as Thomas Hobbes put it, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So people made a deal. They agreed to give up some of their freedom in exchange for protection. They formed governments, not because some king had divine right, but because it was mutually beneficial. This is the social contract, an implicit agreement between citizens and the state. You follow the rules. The state protects your rights. But here's the problem. You never actually signed this contract. You were born into it. You didn't choose your country. You didn't agree to its laws. Yet you're expected to follow them. So is the social contract just a fiction? Rousseau would say no. He'd say you consent through participation. Every time you use public roads, call the police, or benefit from social services, you're implicitly accepting the contract. You can't enjoy the benefits while refusing the obligations. But the social contract also has limits. If the government fails to protect your rights, if it becomes tyrannical, then the contract is broken, and you're no longer bound by it. This idea justified revolutions. The American Revolution, the French Revolution. They were based on the claim that the government had violated the social contract. Today, the social contract is fraying. People feel disconnected from institutions. They see corruption, inequality, systems that don't serve them. And they ask, why should I uphold my end of the bargain when the government isn't upholding theirs? It's a valid question, but Rousseau would remind us the social contract isn't just between you and the government. It's between you and your fellow citizens. When you follow the rules, you're not just obeying authority. You're honoring an agreement with everyone else in your community. You're saying, I'll restrain my self-interest for the common good, because that's what allows us to live together in peace. The social contract is fragile. It requires trust, reciprocity, a shared belief that we're all in this together. And when that belief erodes, society fractures. So the question becomes, how do we renew the contract? How do we rebuild trust? How do we create a society where everyone feels like they're getting a fair deal? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Because without the social contract, we're back in the state of nature, and no one wants to live there. The luck you can't control. Imagine two people, both drive drunk, both make the same reckless decision, but one gets home safely, the other hits a pedestrian and kills them. Are they equally blameworthy? Most people say no. The one who killed someone is worse. But why? The only difference between them is luck. One got lucky, the other didn't. This is called moral luck, and it's a paradox that challenges how we think about responsibility. The philosopher Thomas Nagel argued that moral luck reveals a contradiction in our ethical intuitions. On one hand, We believe that people should only be judged for things within their control. You can't be blamed for something you didn't choose. On the other hand, we clearly do judge people based on outcomes, many of which are beyond their control. A surgeon who loses a patient is blamed more than one who succeeds, even if they performed the exact same operation. A driver who accidentally hits someone is blamed more than one who doesn't, even if both were equally careless. This suggests that luck plays a much larger role in morality than we like to admit. Who you become is partly a result of factors you didn't choose, where you were born, who your parents were, the opportunities you were given, the temptations you faced. Two people with the same character might live very different moral lives, simply because one faced more difficult circumstances. Nagel's point is not that we should stop holding people accountable. It's that we should be humble in our judgments, because the line between a good person and a bad person is often thinner than we think. It's often just luck. If you'd been born in different circumstances, you might have made very different choices. If you'd faced different temptations, you might have failed where you succeeded. This doesn't mean morality is meaningless. It means compassion is essential. When you judge someone, remember, you don't know what they've been through. You don't know what battles they've fought inside themselves. You don't know how much of their success is effort and how much is luck. And the same is true for you. If you've done well in life, don't assume it's all because you're virtuous. Some of it is luck. And if you've struggled, don't assume it's all because you're flawed. Some of it is luck too. Moral luck teaches us humility. It teaches us to judge less and understand more. Because in the end, we're all at the mercy of forces beyond our control. And the kindest thing we can do is extend grace to others and to ourselves. The treadmill of desire. Here's something psychologists have discovered. When people win the lottery, they're ecstatic at first. But within a year, their happiness returns to baseline. They're no happier than they were before. This is called the hedonic treadmill, and it reveals something uncomfortable about human nature. We adapt to our circumstances, both good and bad. You get a promotion, and at first it feels amazing. But soon you're used to it. It becomes the new normal, and you start wanting the next promotion. You buy something you've been dreaming about. It brings joy for a while. Then it's just another possession, and you're eyeing something else. The treadmill keeps spinning, and no matter how fast you run, you never seem to get ahead. The ancient Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They called it the insatiability of desire. Epicurus put it simply, if you want to make someone rich, don't give them more money, teach them to desire less. Because the problem isn't that you don't have enough. The problem is that your desires keep expanding. You think, if I just had X, I'd be happy. But when you get X, you immediately start wanting Y. The hedonic treadmill doesn't mean happiness is impossible. It means you can't find lasting happiness through external achievements, through acquisitions, through status, because you'll always adapt. And then you'll want more. So where does lasting happiness come from? The Stoics would say, from within, from cultivating virtues, from living in alignment with your values, from appreciating what you already have. This doesn't mean you can't pursue goals or enjoy nice things. It means don't stake your happiness on them, because they won't deliver the lasting fulfillment you're hoping for. True contentment comes from shifting your focus, from external to internal, from getting to being, from more to enough. When you step off the treadmill, something shifts. You realize you already have what you need, not in a material sense, but in a deeper sense. You have this moment You have your breath. You have your capacity for awareness. And that's enough. The treadmill will always be there, inviting you back, promising that the next thing will be different. But you don't have to get back on. You can just stand still and discover that standing still, being present, being content, is its own kind of richness. Philosophy is not about answers. It's about learning to live with questions. Questions that don't go away. Questions that deepen the longer you sit with them. And that's okay, because the questions themselves are the journey. Tonight, you've explored ideas that have shaped human thought for millennia. The cave and the shadows. The ship that changes piece by piece. The self that watches itself. The void that gives birth to meaning. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're lenses, ways of seeing, and each lens reveals something new about what it means to be human. So carry these ideas with you, not as answers, but as companions, guides through the mystery of existence. And remember, you don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to have it all together. You're exactly where you need to be, right here, right now, in this moment, which is the only moment there ever is. Sleep well, and let these ideas drift through your mind like stars across the night sky. Beautiful, distant, eternal, and always, always there, even when you're not looking. Good night, sweet dreams. See you at the other side.